Welcome back, everyone, to the Disaster Tough podcast, where we share insights into the big plays and right calls of leadership. We dive deep into the stories, lessons learned, and ideas that will help you in the field. Let's go. Welcome back to the Disaster Tough podcast. I'm your host, John Scardina. So this is a very special episode. It's a recap of the inaugural TRL Insider webinar series. I'm going to play it for you. I had Zach Borst from EM Weekly, Prescott Nadeau from Livefire Layout, and myself asking Pete Gaynor all questions about leadership. It expands it so much more than what I had on my podcast, so it's a really great experience. We wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to listen to it, because eventually the TRL Insider webinar series will be for those subscribers only. So make sure you check out the TRL Insider program. It has a ton of perks, discounts from our sponsors. It has blogs. It has monthly tabletop exercises that we upload with audio and visual effects sometimes. It's really great stuff. It also has announcements for upcoming events. So if you're a TRL Insider, you get so many perks with us. Again, we wanted to give this out to the field to make sure that you had an opportunity to listen to it. If you got something out of it, again, please consider subscribing. And of course, check us out every week for the Disaster Tough podcast for a new episode. Let's go. Welcome to the TRL Insider live webinar. We are influencers in emergency services who want to push the field to the next level. With me is Zach Borst, the host of EM Weekly, Prescott Nadeau, the host of Livefire Layout, and I am John Scardina, the host of the Disaster Tough podcast. Our honored guest today is Pete Gaynor. Pete is an experienced leader in crisis management with a notable career that includes serving as the FEMA Administrator and acting Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security during the Trump and Biden administrations. His extensive background includes roles as the Director of State and Local Emergency Management Agencies and 26 years of service in the U.S. Marine Corps. Gaynor's experience includes all these incredible things, including now recently starting his own masterclass, Leading During Crisis. It's designed for leaders in government, the military, and corporate sectors seeking to navigate the challenges of resilience. For more detailed information on that, please visit FEMAPete.com. So before we begin, I just want to talk about a few logistics for the crowd. First of all, thank you everyone who has signed up, who's tuning in right now. We had such a huge crowd for our inaugural webinar, and that's goes out to you, so thank you for that. And especially to all of our TRL Insiders, all those subscribers who help us out. You're able to tune in, which allows us and gives us the ability to do something like this. And so we're really grateful for you. TRL Insiders get a special announcements from us. They get monthly audio TTX, which is really fun. The one that just came out yesterday, so make sure you check that out. AI inspiration, articles, discounts to the Readiness Lab merch store, and of course, discounts with our sponsors. Speaking of which, we want to thank all of our sponsors, L3 Harris Technologies, Paladin and Acela Company, Impulse, and everyone who works behind the scenes at the Readiness Lab and Doberman to make this happen. And especially a special thanks to Pete Gaynor for providing the largest discount available to his masterclass, Leading During Crisis. Subscribe to TRL Insider for a special 20% discount and an opportunity to chat with him on a one-on-one for 30 minutes. Pretty great stuff. So with that being said, I just want to say hi to everybody who's with me on the webinar. And Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. It's good to be here.
So let's talk about main topics. Zach, can you introduce our topic for us?
Yes, we are talking about every emergency manager's favorite thing, and that is politics. It is the third rail of emergency services sometimes, but it's also really important. And as such, I guess I'll reference, I'll throw a quote right back at you, Pete, and that is, you cannot separate EM from politics. It's built in. So with that, my first question is, what role has politics played in your career as an emergency manager, and how can emergency managers navigate the political landscape effectively?
Yeah. So thanks, Zach and Prescott for being here today. Hey, this is something that's entwined with emergency management because disasters affect everyone. And if you're a disaster survivor, you're looking to your local, state, county, tribal, territorial leaders to get you out of that jam. So they're innately they're political. I've had the opportunity to work for 2 Democrat mayors in the city of Providence when I was the city of Providence emergency manager. I had the opportunity to work for a Democrat governor, Gina Raimondo, who's now the Commerce Secretary, when I was the state director in Rhode Island, and had the opportunity to work for President Trump, a Republican president, as his federal emergency manager at FEMA. And I think, and it's kind of a funny story because people look at how you're, they assume you're labeled one color or the other, blue or red. And they continue to ask me, like, how'd you get this job when I worked for the president? And it's like, I just applied for it. And hopefully I had some background in it. But I think the key for every emergency manager, no matter if you're a director leading an emergency management agency or you're just, one of the team members of a organization or an agency, is in public safety, right? And so whether you're a firefighter or a police officer, but especially as an emergency manager, you cannot pick sides. If you start picking sides based on the party that your boss belongs to, like whether it's a Democrat or a Republican or independent or something else, you will fail. And not only will you fail, but you'll be publicly punished for it. And so for me, and this is from my first day as a local emergency manager, with actually no real background in emergency management on day one, I don't care how you voted, right? I don't care what flag you fly, what bumper sticker you have on your car. For me, and I'm sure it's the same for many emergency managers, we're all Americans, right? And that is the essence of how you deliver services after disaster, right? Never check IDs. I don't care what country you're from. The role of emergency managers throughout the nation, whether you're at the local or the federal government, is to deliver those services, no matter what political party you are attached to. It doesn't matter. So if you're out there as an emergency manager and you're wondering how to navigate, don't pick sides. Stay right down the middle.
The L3 Harris Extreme 400p radio solves problems and is specifically designed for emergency services. How do we know? We field tested it with medical, urban search and rescue, and collapsed and confined structures. This radio is amazingly tough. Check out the L3 Harris Extreme 400p radio at l3harris.com right now. If you served in the military, you've probably worn Proper Apparel. Proper Apparel is now reaching out to first responders and those who love the outdoors. Check out Proper Apparel. From the outdoors to the EOC, wear proper. How do you spell Doberman Emergency Management? EOP, OEP, HVA, HMP, Thyra, TTX, Drone, PDA. Whenever you need an expert, Doberman Emergency Management field experts are there for support. Contact an expert at DobermanEMG.com today.
Well, and I think there's a few things you hit on there, but one is, the neutrality obviously is really important, right? And then anyone that's in any emergency service, right? You're the ambulance pulls up. You don't want someone looking at the political sign on your yard and being like, you know what? Let's get back in the truck and split. And same with law enforcement, firefighting, all of that. Like we're expected to be neutral and help everyone, but there's definitely times where you're going to have to play that game. And I think a lot of emergency managers sort of avoid engaging in politics, and it actually can hurt you as well. So I guess, how do you find that balance of like playing the game a little bit, but also, I think John said it, staying above the fray.
Yeah. So, you say play politics, and so there's like the game of pure politics. I think that's one thing, and then there's how politics affect disasters. So in the game of politics, I made it a personal rule. No donations to any party, even to my boss's party. No political donations. No lawn signs on my lawn. No public, fundraisers where you're in this fundraising kind of thing. You may want to do it, but don't do it. You may have people that pressure you to do it, and usually it's never the political leader. It's always some campaign manager or some chief of staff that, suggests that you take a more active role as a political appointee. And I think, if you're outside of public safety, maybe you have to do that a little bit. But I've been a political appointee for 14 years, right? It's every emergency management job I have as a political appointee. And I, if somebody asked me, I told them, no, I'm not doing it. And it makes, and so they may look at you a different way, but okay, if you don't like the way I'm, leading your emergency management agency, you can go find somebody else. But you gotta stay right down the middle. It makes life so much simpler, especially when there's decisions to be made, right? That they know where you stand, right? They know exactly where you stand. So they become more reluctant to ask you to do something that may be more political. And so, from the get-go, make sure the guy or gal you're working for understands how you're going to operate in this environment. It's critical.
So then in a situation where, like we're obviously, politics is just so much more charged than I think they've been for a while. And obviously there was points where there was fistfights in Congress and duels and everything else that went down. But we're kind of in an era again
Hamilton.
where politics, yeah, exactly. There's an era now where it's a little bit elevated, but there are times, like I think especially when you're trying to get like appropriations for funding, or you're trying to get a program, some legislation through, that you have to do that. So how do you sort of play, again, I'm not trying to drag you into playing politics, but like that's sort of that point where you have to sort of put on the suit, go to the, political office, and then say like, hey, I need some help here. So
it's a really good question, Zach. So, and I'll just use my time as the FEMA administrator. So at FEMA, we have oversight, congressional, Senate, and, House oversight committees that, and it's true for every department and agency, but at FEMA, we had a couple, and their responsibility is to make sure that you as an agency, you as a Senate appointed political appointee are doing all of the right things. Now, all the right things has maybe a different connotation depending on what side of the aisle you're from, but they I think the intent is honorable, right?
Sure.
But you have to understand how it all works. So, and it does, and I'm not picking a party because all the parties do it, so it doesn't really matter. But in those public hearings, in whatever committee you're in front of, it's really not about you, right? And you have to realize that it's not about you personally. It's really about whatever if you pick like a local representative represent his or her district, it's about that district, right? And there may be something in that district that in this case FEMA did wrong or needs to do better at, and they're advocating for their district, and all that laser beam, right, for those 30, 40, 50 seconds is on you, right, for the answer or to correct it, and that is just part of how it all works. And on the camera, right, for the most part, that's how it's designed. Because they're going to get their 20-second soundbite. It's going to be at your expense, right? That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
You're going to have thick skin. But on the other side, after the cameras are gone, behind closed doors, I have had, and I'm not going to say any names, but I've had people who were in my face about stuff, right?
Sure.
Make a point, come to me after and say, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Right. And I'll just say, not from the Republican Party, like from the Democrat. I say, if you need help, you just come help us because we want to help you, right? So you have to understand that that's how it's designed, right? It's how it's designed. Now, not everyone is that way, right? Some people really, I think there's some personalities out there that hold can really hold a personal grudge, but you can't let that impede you from your mission or get you off track from your mission. But so part of this is you have to understand how the game is played, right? And if you can play the game well, then it's better for you and it's better for your organization.
All right, I'm going to ask one more follow-up and then I'm going to hand it off to Prescott. So you're talking about sort of times where you have to take it on the chin and handle things, I guess, without a reaction. That's really hard. You have 26 years as a Marine, so I'm sure there's probably not a lot of people who can intimidate you, but like if for someone who maybe doesn't have that sort of experience, having, how do you sort of suggest, people prepare for that? Like, what is the, like, how do you not get yourself into trouble? Because
and that's, again, another great question.
Thank you.
Did Scardina write that?
No, these are actually coming out of my head. These are live follow-ups. So he's trying to type these quickly.
Yeah. And the FEMA staff is wonderful, and the intergovernmental affairs staff, they never put, and whether it's me or it was Brock or it's Deanne, right? They're not putting you up there unprepared. Matter of fact, you know that committee meeting is happening weeks ahead of time. You generally know what the topic's going to be. The team is researching the questions that certain staff members are going to ask. So there's a lot of intelligence gathering along the way. And, you spend hours with the staff grilling you before you go live, right? So you can't leave it to chance. You have to do your preparation. And if you have a really good team around you, they'll constantly remind you, hey, it's not about you, right? It's not about you. It's about things that, are connected tangentially to FEMA or, the district where this person is going to ask a question from. It's not about you. And so if you just remember that, and you can tell time, it will be over in 90 minutes. The pain will stop after 90 minutes and you go on your way. And then you just, you get ready for the next one. So,
it reminds me of, I was just in Disney World and I took my little kids on some of the more extreme rides. And once we were on it, you can't get off. And I was just like, it's okay. There's the end of the ride. Like, we just have to make it another couple 100 feet and it'll be fine. No, that's a really good answer. And no, I think it's good to think about that.
Here's another piece of advice. A senator gave me early on. He and this had to do with committee meetings, committee hearings. He said, don't pick a fight with the senator. You'll lose, even if you're right. Even if you're right. So, again, it's a lot of self-control, but it's sage advice, right? You can fight after, right? You can go to the staff, go to the senator, or whatever, and you can advocate for why his opinion is wrong. You're able to do that, and I have done that.
Yeah.
But publicly, if you're going to pick a fight with and it doesn't matter if it's a federal or local, you pick a fight publicly, even if you're right, you could lose. You will lose.
Yes. Yeah. What's the saying? If you argue with an idiot, eventually they beat you down and with experience. And all right. Well, that's I'm going to hand it over to Prescott now. All that advice is just awesome, and I really do. I know that we had someone pop up and say this is so critical for the field right now, and it is. Politics are always involved in navigating this. Like someone who's been through the highest levels, I think it's amazing. So I really appreciate that. So Prescott, I cede the floor to you.
Awesome, Zach. Thank you. And Pete, thanks so much for being here. We're going to go back, whether it's politics or not, everyone wants to be able to be where they're at right now and look back to when they first started in whatever respective field. Now you, Pete, have a storied career. Zach had mentioned 26 years, sort of a brief stint, if you will, in the United States Marine Corps, which, by the way, sir, Semper Fi. My brother's a major in the Marine Corps right now, so tremendous respect for you. My whole life has been in the fire service, and I have a new love and appreciation for emergency management thanks to these guys right here. From someone who wants to transition into emergency management to someone who has done it so well, and that's you, Pete. What advice do you give to day one, Pete, in emergency management? Yeah.
I tell the story about the cultures that we all live in or come from, right? So, early on in my career, I came from a military culture, and there's a lot of things that go along with that, right? And I have come to learn the different cultures, especially in public safety, public health, right? So if I can just briefly go down what each culture is, because I think it's important to realize, like, where you, especially if you're transitioning from one, from the fire service to emergency management, it's actually two different cultures. So, firefighters, for the most part, and I generalize, right? I'm just making generalizations, but it's all generally true. Firefighters spend their career together, like 5 on an engine, 4 on an engine. They spend their life together. They live in the station together. They cook meals together. They sleep together. They go to fires together. They decision make together, right? That's kind of the culture of the firefighters, fire service. Police officers, right, spend their career probably by themselves, right? If you're a patrol officer, you spend your entire shift in your car, driving around your neighborhood. You may have a partner early on when you're young, but for the most part, you're out there by yourself making decisions on the street. A tremendous amount of discretion about, do I give the guy a ticket or do I take him in? Do I arrest him? You have a lot of discretion. If you get in a jam, if there's a issue over your head, you call the sergeant, you call the lieutenant, they come out, they help you, and that's it. So you're your own person as a police officer, right? That's their culture. Public health people, some of my favorite people, right? Researchers, scientists, non-practicing doctors, right? Do no harm, right? Their culture is they're going to exhaust all the possible solutions before they tell you what the final solution is, right? Sometimes that takes a little bit too long, but it's a different kind of culture. They need to be peer reviewed, right? They need to be published, right? And then you have emergency managers, and emergency managers are the nation's problem solvers. And from my point of view, I don't need a lot of information to solve a problem. Maybe I just need 50%. Maybe I even need less than that to get started. So, coming from one, sector like fire sector into something else, you really have to realize that you're going to enter a different culture, and you're going to have to deal with many other cultures, many more than I just mentioned. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to kind of adapt to all that, right? So, my transition from the military, where I gave an order and I didn't have to think twice about it, that into the civilian world, when you have civilians only work 8 hours a day, and they have duties, and they have a union, and civilians really don't take orders well. So you have to adapt. So be aware of your surroundings, right? You have to kind of see where you are in your world. Just don't go in there blind, because it probably won't work out well.
No, I don't think so. And I love that, because we all bring different positives, negative, aspects into the job.
Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. Being a small part of that myself, I can appreciate a lot of that. One thing that I think we can all agree on that is universal across fire, police, EMS, and emergency management is communications. I'll tie it back into our topic as it relates to politics. So all emergency management and services talks about the need for better communications. How do you think we can become more persuasive with leadership or politicians to get what we need for the ultimate mission success?
Yeah, really another good question. I used to have this roadshow I did when I was the deputy administrator, going out and talking to people of the 5 things I wish I did better or concentrated on better when I was a state director or a local director, right? And one of them was, I wish I did more legislation, right? I wish I won't say lobbied, but advocated for the importance of the emergency management mission, wherever I was, whether it was local or state, right? And again, I think it's a little bit like politics. I think there's a minority of people who are built to be elected officials. There's a minority of people who are comfortable in the political world, because sometimes it's not very straightforward, right? And one agenda is not like the other agenda, and there's hidden agendas, and you have to have the DNA for it, I think, to work well in a political environment. But that shouldn't stop you from going, to your legislature or your city council, town council, and advocate for the things that are important to you. Everyone loves a good executive order, right? So whether it's from the president or from the mayor or whatever, right? Because if you can persuade the mayor to do an executive order to get something that you want, that's great. But what is not so great about it, it's temporary. So as soon as that mayor leaves, maybe you stay on, that great executive order gets sunsetted, and now you're back to zero. So those kinds of things are not enduring. So if you're going to invest some time, right, to make your organization better, go advocate for yourself with the people who can change the law. That's the best investment you can make. Again, I wish I did more of it when I was a local and state director. But I understand the conflict, right? We're responding to disasters, and that takes a lot of time, or we're recovering. But you gotta make it a point to go advocate for the things that's important, because I think part of your goal is to make the place better, right? And not to relive some of the mistakes or some of the things that we see that are faulty in the system. Right? You got to try to fix those.
You just thank you so much for that, because the reality of it is, that question was related a lot to communications, but it drove right back, and you nailed it home when it came to the intersection of politics and leadership and how we can all do that better. Low-hanging fruit. Just get out there, talk to the right people, because at the end of the day, we want to appreciate the fact that mission success, we want to pretend that it's going to come from our plans, training, and exercises, and it will, but it's also going to talk from the low-hanging fruit of straight-up communication with the folks who need it.
Yeah, so let me give you the low-hanging fruit one. And this is the way I love to operate. And some people get it and some people don't. But I think there's a sense of simplicity in it. I tell people, listen, and this is, and I can see their faces right now at FEMA, great staffs. Everyone has their own project. They want to brief you on their work that they're doing, which is important. And it's 100 slides and there's lots of content to it. And I try to put a stop to all of that. And maybe that's my personality. And so my belief is, listen, just give me a good yes or a good no. That's all I need. I don't need all the, some things that maybe that are new to me, or there's some policy issues that I don't clearly understand. I'm going to ask for more. But we spend a lot of time just kind of wringing our hands and is this the right way to go, wrong way to go? And in emergency management, it's all about the clock, right? If you can't take action in a timely manner, you might as well just roll it up. So give me a good yes or give me a good no. If you give me a good no, I'm fine with that, right? But don't waste my time with all the other stuff that does not matter and doesn't help me get to the solution, right? Again, I think it will help speed things along, especially, right? So if you can do it in an administrative way, imagine how well that would work in a crisis where you don't have a lot, you're not going to have a lot of time to understand the problem, right? But your staff needs to understand how you operate, and they need to get you, or they need to get to that place that you desire. So yeah, a good yes or a good no.
A good yes or a good no. And Pete, thank you so much for that, because as somebody, again, looking to transition into emergency management, the field, I used to think that a lot of words or fluff was really, going to in some way help be part of the solution. Everything that you just said and what I have drastically realized is that's a big old no.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're wasting my time with extra slides.
Yeah, like right now. That's all right. So yeah, with no more fluff from me.
Can I piggyback on that last question though? Yeah. So I think I'm actually doing a talk on this because I don't think it's emphasized enough early in people's careers that emergency managers are communicators. Every single emergency manager has to. And I get that there's introverts, there's people who are not comfortable with public speaking, but how? We in this group here got good because we talk a lot between the podcasting. I'm really fortunate I get to go do a lot of presentations around the country. I love it, but because it's something that is, Seinfeld jokes that people are more afraid of public speaking than they are death. So at a funeral, they'd rather be the one in the casket than the one giving the eulogy. How do you get good at that? Because that sort of is the crux of everything you're talking about right now, is just being able to communicate with different audiences in different environments with a different approach, dynamic, moving through this constantly. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I'll just say a quick story of my first day as emergency manager of Providence, and a team of people kind of shepherded me along to the first day, and I had one of those people was the mayor's press secretary, I'm going to work now, and she's gonna let me go do my own thing after I get announced. And I asked her, so can I get your phone number and your email, because when we have press thing, I need to include you in because you're going to be doing it. And she starts laughing at me. and I'm like, well, what's so funny? He goes, listen, I'm not your press secretary. I'm the mayor's press secretary. You're going to do your own press. And I'm like, oh, no. I did not sign up for that, right? I have to have a press secretary somewhere here, right? No. And then, and I realized that, this is the way it's going to be. And then it's like, holy crap, I got to get serious about this. And so, I practiced and I studied and I did it, and I had people critique me about how bad it was. And it's always bad at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then I think it's like, you can make it long and complicated, and that just is bad for you. And so, my whole thing is keep it simple, right? Just like tell people exactly what they need, nothing more, right? Because you're going to be doing it in a crisis where you don't have time for all that other stuff. It's kind of like the Wii message or the iPod message. You only have a certain amount of characters to tell the story about what is happening. So don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. I think honestly, when I hear politicians drone on and on and on about something, listen, I'll give you like 60 seconds and I'm kidding now. That's all I'm going to give you. So give, if you're an emergency manager, give your community a good 60 seconds, right? A good 60 seconds. And listen, you got to practice at it. You don't become good overnight. But keep it simple. It's better for you and it's better for your audience.
Yeah. No, I just think I'm hoping everyone that's watching right now, it's just one of those things that I wish, I don't know how we would teach it as a FEMA course, but it's one of those things you don't realize, because even like networking, right? Like when you walk in and you have to start introducing yourself to people, like I was terrible at that initially because I didn't feel like I was supposed to be in the room with everybody else. And I missed out on a lot of opportunities to grow. And then all of a sudden I found out that's kind of how everyone feels. So if you just make a chat, then here we go. Like now I'm like just talking to you, and then it turns into a relationship, and I'm getting better at communicating. And
it's almost like we have a PIO on here with Prescott. One of the, and I actually shared this earlier today. We had an opportunity to go on the media, the news, and I took Prescott to heart. Be brilliant, be brief, be gone. 3 talking points, the whole deal. It's a great course on that. And obviously, Pete, you're talking about that experience as well. And the media, because I followed those tenets that Prescott set up, my media went, from like a 0 to off the charts because of following those principles. In terms of like following principles, right? And making sure that we have the opportunity to, I wouldn't say ensure mission success. Everything breaks. There isn't a rule that it's always true for everything, besides maybe being kind. I really do believe in that one. However, from a leadership perspective, you started your own masterclass, leading during crisis, right? You have basically formalized principles of leadership that it could apply to emergency management. You called it out: emergency management, emergency services, private sector, even universities. Anybody who's in a leadership role. In terms of like that perspective, what motivated you specifically to lead, to figure out, hey, we need more leadership capability out in the field?
Yeah, it's a good question. So why leading during crisis? It's really a great question. And so, I've had this belief, and it was probably, I don't know, maybe my parents, and maybe my drill instructors, and maybe the Marines I work with, but I always had this principle either in me or drilled into me. I don't know what it is, but it's in me now, is that, you have to leave it better than you found it. Right. Because I think, especially if you're a leader, if you Zach is giving me props on that. I think
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a Boy Scout motto.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's how you leave it better than you found it.
I was never a Boy Scout. I couldn't live up to those size things. But I think part of my belief is that, you're here for a reason, right? You got appointed to be, the platoon commander, or you got appointed to be the director, or you got appointed to be the FEMA Administrator. You're here for a reason. And so part of that is to leave it better than you found it. And I think, part of my goal is, how do I, COVID crisis, right? It's at least now today, it's like a once in 100-year event that doesn't come around too often. And so I just happen to be at the right place at the right time, at the wrong place at the wrong time, however you want to look at it. But I think I owe it to, the next generational leaders to give them what I learned, right? I want to give you what I learned because the next thing is coming, right? And as a professional emergency manager, I want to make sure my people are prepared for the next thing, because it's not going to be me doing it, right? I got the check in the box. I'm done on that. It's going to be you, and I want to make sure that you have the tools that you need to be an effective leader in crisis. So that's kind of the essence of why I wanted to do it. It took me about a year to kind of figure out all the things that I learned, and so you can get online and you can go download the course, and it costs a few bucks, but it's not prohibitive. But it's really like I want to leave a little bit the organization, right, of emergency management, the enterprise of emergency management, the nation, right, a little better than I found it.
Yeah, it's your like positive mark. Zach, myself, Prescott, some of the members of our team have seen parts of your presentation in person, and it got us really excited to, because you were testing out different, I wouldn't say testing out, but you were adding things to it, and we were able to see you putting those principles together. And when you came out with the masterclass, it was really exciting. I've had you on Disaster Class or Disaster Tough to talk about that class, and really just like making it a knockout. From that perspective of you and I having a little bit of background and seeing you work through those things and all leaving the positive mark, there's this funny thing that Zach shared with me maybe 6 months ago. It started from the 1920s, and in every 10 years, there was an article that came out that said, "Oh, this rising generation."
It started in the 600. It was like Plato was carving it into stone.
The rising generation,
Yeah.
It was such a negative look on it, right? It was like, oh, just complaining that somehow I have all these skill sets, nobody has anything, and we're all doomed. But you didn't take that approach. You're saying, hey, I've been lucky enough to do this. I want to pass this on to ensure that. What gives you kind of the hope? I wouldn't say hope, but why did you take a positive approach instead of these Gen Zs or these millennials, whatever? How do you look at it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, whether I was in the city of Providence or the state or FEMA, the people that surrounded me were brilliant, right? And in the course, that's one of my tenets is, you got to hire the very best people, right? And if you don't hire the very best people, everything else becomes impossible. But yeah, it's.
I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, you do learn it the hard way.
I'm right here, John.
You actually really do learn it the hard way. Yeah, that's funny.
You do, but I mean, you gotta make an investment in yourself, and the people that have been around me, right? I am still today and especially coming out of FEMA recently, I am still in awe of the talent that is embedded at FEMA at the career level, guys and gals that have been there for a couple of years to 30, 40 years. The level of talent, and I don't think FEMA gets enough credit for this. The level of talent at FEMA is amazing, right? And I give credit to the people that surrounded me, whether they were within my 12-foot wingspan or they were supporting me from a distance. Really, truly amazing. And I think that goes to every kind of agency that I've been in, right? So I think back to some of the things that are important is you gotta make an investment in how you hire people, right? It's because if you delegate hiring to someone else, you'll get an organization that does not reflect you, and that's going to bother you. So you have to get involved in hiring because you want that organization to reflect the things that you believe in, right? And the things that you believe are important. If you delegate to somebody else, you're going to wake up unhappy every day.
And the Machiavellian flip of that is make sure that you're hiring good leaders who are going to do that hiring, because otherwise you have the bad people bringing in bad people, which I think a lot of us have also experienced, right? I think it's Donald Rumsfeld, A's hire A's, right? Yeah. You were saying, and then B's hire C's. And that is like burned into my brain from the class. I mean, you gave it to us live, but just that, it is that thing where like sometimes I've heard of people hiring someone like, well, I just wanted to give them a shot because of this. And it's like, yeah, but they don't want to be here. Like that's not, and in emergency services, you can't do that. Like everyone here has to be all in.
We're not running an orphanage or anything, we're running a business, right?
Yeah.
And part of your responsibility is to have the very best people in that business. Why would you hire somebody who's second rate? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'll just share with you, when I was an administrator, one of the things I committed to was I wanted to be involved in every SES hire. So these are senior executive service. These are the generals and admirals of
that cash money.
And they make a lot of money, but they deserve it. So at FEMA, there's 113 SESs. And when I was there, I think I hired 33. Like personally involved in 33 hires of SESs. Right now, I could have delegated, all those to someone else, and I may have to, a couple. But the ones that were important to the agency, I was involved in it. Right, and it takes time and it takes effort. But you have to do it.
The couple you didn't hire, they're going to be like, wait, I wasn't important to the agency.
No, everyone's thinking like, wait, he hired me. Am I one of the couple? Or
yeah. So, that comes back down to like from the other side of the house too, right? Like if somebody's trying to get into FEMA and the FEMA administrator is willing to be in that hiring process, whatever organization it is, it means something. We have a small company and they reach out, and often I take the phone call because I'm a small company. And yesterday, some kid was in college, and he was like, "Hey, I would love it." I'm like, "Hey, this is John." He's like, "Oh, disaster tough." I was like, "I love your stuff." I was like, "Great." I was like, "I'm gonna have Zach call you." He's like, "Oh, I love Zach." Whatever. He was shocked that leadership was willing to field questions from him. But even still, I took 5 minutes and we just talked about what his objectives were. Yeah. And I think that means a lot to people when, like sometimes I meet like mid-level career leaders who are not really leaders, and they're just so puffed up that they don't realize that they're not approachable. And you and I have talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast about being approachable. From your masterclass, and we're looking at the time here, but essentially from the masterclass perspective, if somebody hasn't been in that leadership or they're in that kind of puffed up thing and they're starting to realize, hey, maybe I need some better skills here, what would be something that may be surprising in your masterclass? You're like, oh, that's like definitely something I wasn't thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, there's probably a couple things. I think that one of the blocks that I instruct on is don't listen to the media, right? And it's
except for podcast media.
Yeah, sorry, John. Sorry, but don't. And this is obviously in context of a crisis, but you can you're gonna have good days and you're gonna have bad days. If you believe that you're going to have every day is going to be a good day and everyone loves you and the press is going to be kind to you, and you start reading that stuff, right? And you have some good days out there, and you're the hero, but that's the minority of days because the news, the media is not in the. This is like politics. You got to understand how it's run. The media is not in the good news business, right? They're in the hey, how did this guy screw it up business. And so if you start reading how great you are, and then you start reading how bad you are, then you start second guessing the decisions that you're making, and you bend to the pressure of the media about what they think you should do, or what you should have done, or what you're gonna do, and then you get whipped all over the place, and then it gets into your head, right? And now you start second, third guessing what you really want to do, and you're thinking, what's the media think about this? This is the most dangerous thing that is out there. And again, part of the masterclass is tell you that you can't allow yourself to listen to the media. At FEMA, I was really fortunate. I had a great press secretary, I had a deputy press secretary, I had this big, external affairs department. They can do all that. And there was something that I needed to read, right? They would bring it to me, but very rarely, because I told them, I don't care what they're writing, right? I really don't. That is not my concern. My concern is mission, right? and I need to keep on the straight and narrow on mission. So I think a lot of people are surprised that because the original question is, so if you don't listen to the media, where do you get your information from? It's, hey, come on. Where do I get my information from? I get it from my people, my raw source. Right? I'm not reading in the newspaper to see like what I should do next. It's insane.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the problem, right?
Don't listen to the media except for the Disaster Tough podcast.
There you go.
And the rest.
Fire layout.
Yeah, everything on the Readiness Lab,
There you go.
But there's a difference, right? Because the podcasts are quote unquote slow form media. We think about this. We even thought about the questions today. We really want to learn from you as much as possible. It's a learning environment thing.
And I'm not talking about this stuff.
You're talking about
Yeah.
live pundits going at you, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a couple questions here, and we had some people ask some questions beforehand, so I might load them up here, or have our guy off the screen load them up. But I'm going to paraphrase one of these questions that was loaded up. It's about asking about an example of time when you had to manage response in politically charged environments. I'm going to change it on you a little bit because, quite frankly, you've been in. You're talking about media. You're talking about COVID and all these different very politically charged environments. When you're going into that, although you have to avoid the distraction of media and everything else, obviously, the world's looking at you. The world was looking at FEMA during COVID. The world looks at FEMA during lots of things, as well as any other organization, right? How do you mentally prepare for something like that, knowing that you're about to walk into a room where everybody's coming at you, whether it's from media or politicians behind the scenes? Like, what's that mental toughness look like for you?
Well, I tell people, so I had opportunity, at the city of Providence in the state to do media, right? And, media is at the local level, it can be tough from time to time, but it's much more personal. Like it's more, one-to-one, because that local media person is the person that's going to be there for a long time, and they need to develop a relationship with you because there's going to be another story, right? So, so they're generally less, I want to say, there's some tough questions, but it's not as adversarial as Washington, D.C. And so same with the state, right? Because, in Rhode Island, small state, it's a lot of the same people. So you get a level of comfort with that. And right. But Washington, D.C., when it comes to media, is a whole different game. Like it's all about scale, right? And it's hard for me to describe like what that scale is in DC, but it is big game hunting, right? That's what it is. And you are the game, right? And they're hunting you for whatever purpose they're after. And so you really have to, again, you have to understand like your role, your purpose, your message, right? Have a really great staff around you to help you with all that. Never, ever, ever. And I think we talked about this at the last Die Pop, and maybe it was Prescott and I were back and forth. Never, ever, ever, ever go in front of the media unprepared, ever. I mean, even if they have a gun to your head, don't do it because it will end badly, right? So being ready for the big show, you have to put a lot of time and effort into it. And again, I think goes back to my previous point about you got to keep it simple, right? You got to keep it simple and think about what outcome you're trying to achieve and who you're trying to talk to, right? You're not talking to, you may be talking to a reporter, but you're really not talking to that guy. You're talking to the disaster survivor or the person who needs assistance. So just, you got to keep your head clear on that. And get good people around you to do it because you can't do it yourself.
Well, there was a question earlier about FEMA. If we can read that one, we can pull it up on the screen here. FEMA seems really siloed between headquarters and regions and national IMATs. What does the FEMA admin do to bring those missions together?
So
is that a perception thing? Are they right or they wrong?
It may be where you live, right? I mean, it may be true on something. So for those that don't know, FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C., and then 10 regions around the nation. So as far west as American Samoa and as far east as the U.S. Virgin Islands, 9,300 miles, right? That's kind of, and Alaska, right? So that's the scope of FEMA. And the 10 regions are really the operational arm of FEMA, right? They are out there every day. Regions aren't equally manned. Some regions may be bigger or smaller, but let's just say in each region there's between 400 and 600 people out there every day in one of the 10 regions doing good work. And so, it's like anything else. Do I know what's happening in California every day when Bob Fenton's out there, fighting fires or doing preparedness? I don't know exactly, but I'm connected. As the administrator, I had and especially during COVID, weekly virtual meetings with all the administrators to make sure that we stayed connected on things that were important, and they could report things back to me. Now they could send me an email, they could call me, right? It doesn't really matter, but we made it a point to not to be siloed. But in a big organization, I think that's the challenge, right? How do you become less siloed? And so it happens. You share information, you share the good with the bad, and again, as the FEMA administrator, I'm trying to help empower and leverage and push, delegate power to where it really matters in those regions, because those are the guys and gals that are making the magic happen at the lower level. Yes, headquarters is insulated, right? It's Washington, D.C., and I don't think it matters whether it's FEMA or something else. You have a Washington, D.C. view of your world. But there's nothing like getting out of Washington, D.C., go travel and meet people. So that's also part of it. I think it's probably partially true, and I'm sure every administrator is trying to kind of break down those silos so it's truly one FEMA. And again, I think for the most part, I think it's, at least when I was there, I have no reason to believe that's any different today. That we are united in purpose.
In every large organization that I've worked with, whether it was DC in California, FEMA or otherwise, I'd always hear this common, I wouldn't say issue, but I think it's a perception thing from a lot of organizations, and it's really a leadership question. Somebody at some point when they feel like they're out of the loop for whatever reason, they'll say this quip like, "Oh, I guess knowledge is currency here." And really, sometimes people just are not that important to what the requirement is, and sometimes they're just left out. And those are just realities of life. From a leadership perspective, whether it's in FEMA or any organization as a leader, how do you look at, making sure that people are, one, valued, but like, quote unquote, knowledge in an organization is not currency?
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is internal FEMA stuff. I mean, we had a monthly FEMA bulletin that had all sorts of things that the agency was going to do on the schedule to share information with the entire organization. We had, depending on the topic, we had, virtual town halls. So especially during COVID, now you're not going to get the entire agency on a virtual town hall, but you got to get a lot of it, and that word spreads. I went out and did in-person town halls before COVID, right, to kind of give the headquarters view of what we were doing and what I wanted as an administrator, right? So going out to the 10, I didn't get to all 10. I think I get to 7 or so before COVID hit, but going out and meeting the people that make a difference, the FEMA employees. So there's lots of things you can do. It's not, listen, it's imperfect, right? You're not going to touch 100% of the people, although that should be your goal. And then you got to communicate through every kind of mode, right? So whether it's a online web page or a bulletin or an email or a text or Facebook, you got to communicate on all those kind of channels to get to the last person in line.
I think it's also like having that authentic where like you're in person, it does mean something. I know sometimes like bosses look at it like, oh, I got to go like down here. And then sometimes the people at the bottom are like, oh, we got to all like perform because the boss is coming. We had General Brown visit our base last year, and he was authentic and genuine and like was listening to us. And you're like, oh my gosh, like this is a big deal. And so it can be really like, okay, we're not on our own. This is a team effort, and
it was one of my. It was you can't do it everywhere because there is some scheduling that has to happen. But where I could get away with it, I had a number of unannounced visits where because I had the car to get in the door. I had the car that could get any door at FEMA, no matter where it was. I just could get in, and really upset staff that are responsible for all that, right? But for me, it was a blast, right?
Yeah.
You show up in an organization and there's no parade, and I told people no parades, no bands, no balloons, right? I'm just gonna show up, and in some cases, I didn't tell anyone. I remember I was a deputy, and it was me and one of my advisors going out, and I told her to go get a car from the carpool, and her and I going out, and she goes, "Well, who should I tell? Don't tell anyone." And so I'm leaving the building, and I run into Brock. So Brock was still there. He says, "Where you going?" I'm like, "Just going out." And if I told him, he would tell everyone, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I couldn't tell him, but it was really great because you meet people in their own environment. They're natural. You can do like really great bonding with people. I have some hilarious stories from all that, and I can't share them. There's not enough time. But
Webinar 2.0.
Yeah.
But go out there and go out there and put yourself out there. I mean, honestly, I think it's a blast. I think it's a blast.
Well, I'm gonna close it out with this, and then maybe Zach can do our official closeout. But I'll close out my kind of comment here. Is I've said it before on the show. I've said it in person. I've said it to you. We look at you as a mentor, and having you on here is honestly a pleasure. You have talked about leadership in so many different ways. My question on currency earlier reminded me of a thought that you gave to me about leadership. Actually, it wasn't really to me, but it was on the show. And you said, "Hey, it's okay to keep your head down, do your job. People will notice. Everyone always wants to do all the things, but if you're just so good at doing your thing, you're going to be successful." And I think it's incredible advice. And honestly, it's a way for people to remember that, do your job well and then let the pieces follow.
Yeah. And there's a little balance to that, though, because I think most people would think, yeah, keep my head down and do it. But there is appropriate times where you have to advocate for yourself and your mission, right? Because in some cases, and you're not in a national crisis because that's kind of obvious, but in maybe a low-level thing or in the normal course of duties, because I used to have, when I first started, hey, emergency management, what do you guys do when there's no disaster, right? And it's like, I'm doing a ton of stuff. So there's a certain point where you have to advocate for yourself, because if you don't tell your story about your importance to the community, what you're doing for the community, the mission that you have, somebody else will tell the story, or somebody else won't tell the story. So you have to
your budget item
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent call out there. And again, thanks again for sharing those thoughts. I know we're basically out of time here, but what a huge thanks. Zach, you want to close this out?
Yes. Well, thank you to everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the questions ahead of time. And we really appreciate our Readiness Lab insiders for subscribing. These events are put on because of you. And so anyone who's not currently a TRL insider who's signed up for the webinar, we'd love to have you join us. Thank you to our sponsors, L3 Harris Technologies, Paladin, and Acela Company, Impulse, everybody else at Doberman and the Readiness Lab who helped put the production on. And most of all, thank you, Pete, very much for your time. I always walk away from conversations with you thinking about how can I do better. I cannot implore people enough. Sign up for Leading During Crisis. We give a very generous discount, thanks to Pete, to TRL insiders. It's definitely worthy. I've seen it in person, and it's great. It's a lot of useful information. As we're finishing up, make sure to look out for our next webinar, Forgotten Truths About Mass Casualty Incident Management. Subscribe so you can get those updates, and keep an eye on our social media. And Pete, if you have any closing comments on your way out the door here.
FEMAPete.com.
FEMAPete.com. That's where you'll catch him. Check it out. And again, thank you, everyone. And Pete, we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Really great. Appreciate it.